Welcome in, guys, to the live Q&A with the Cubs coaches presented by Gallagher. Gallagher is the official insurance broker, benefits, and risk management services partner of the Chicago Cubs. I'm Mike Bolling, and I'm joined virtually today by four members of the 2021 coaching staff: bench coach Andy Green, pitching coach Tommy Hotovy, hitting coach Anthony Iapoce, and bullpen catcher Chad Noble. What's up, guys? How's it going?
What's going on?
Oh,
Michael, good to see you, man.
Good to see you guys. Chicago's a bit of a snow globe today, but I hope everybody is warm and safe. And we got a awesome 40 minutes lined up. So we'll start with a few intros. Andy Green, bench coach, entering his second season with the Cubs, played for the D-backs and the Mets during his major league career, and managed the San Diego Padres. So we'll just get right into it. First question: what tools do you bring to your job as coaches that help players enjoy a positive work environment and get them to bring their best out on the field every day?
Is that for me because I'm the only guy that got an intro so far?
Yeah, I didn't want
Yeah,
to.
go ahead. You got it.
Okay, I didn't
got
know
it.
if that was like me answer because I was solo intro, but I do like that you left the other guys out and just threw me out there. But I think the first thing you got to bring as a coach is a positive attitude. A game of baseball beats you down. It is such a tough game. It's a game built on failure. It's a game where the best players in the world struggle every single day to maintain a positive attitude. And as a coaching staff, like if you can't bring that to the ballpark every day, you really don't have any value, no matter how smart you are, no matter how good you are, no matter how much you care. Like you got to bring positivity to the ballpark every day. And over the course of 162, especially during pandemic ball, that's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to do, but to me, it's the most impactful thing to have for the guys. Like somebody that they knows in their corner, believes in them, and is bringing a positive attitude to the ballpark.
Yeah, I can imagine. The long grind of a baseball season has to take a humongous toll on your mental game. So appreciate that sentiment. And I'll introduce Tommy Hotovy, the pitching coach, third season in this role, and he previously was a run prevention coordinator for the Cubs and pitched for the Red Sox and Royals. So you kind of know about that grind from a pitching perspective. How would you say you help the pitching staff when it comes to the mental side of the game?
yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing we try to do, just to piggyback off what Greeny said too, is bring in that consistency every day, and being authentic, being trustworthy. I think guys nowadays, they understand when you're trying to get your point across and not being maybe truthful or not being honest with them. Having that honesty, the guys trust you and what you bring every day, and that consistency I think is so important, because like Greeny said, when you're playing 162 games and it is a daily grind, that consistency of what you bring to the table is part of that routine for those players. So just being accountable, being honest with them, and understanding that the more truthful we are and the more we're pointed about what we want to do as a group, I think just makes a huge difference for those guys every day.
Yeah, I could imagine that as well. And I failed to mention, I guess, in the beginning that we're going to get some fan questions, so you'll get some live from our audience, and we'll take our first one here from Joey, and this will be for Tommy. What's the best advice you could give a youth pitcher going into high school trying out for his baseball team?
I love that. I mean, the best advice is have fun. The Just because the reason we get into this game is because we love to play it, right? There's plenty of guys, and I know each one of us on this screen have worked with a professional player that didn't make his high school team. There's handfuls of those guys. So if you go in there and put too much pressure on yourself and expect to make the team or expect to make an impression, understand that it's about having fun and what we want to do and what you want to do in the future. There's plenty of guys that I've worked with and we've been around that didn't make their high school team right away, and keep working, keep grinding, and keep enjoying the game, because that's one thing when it's all said and done and your career is over, whether that is in high school, college, or if you're lucky enough to play pro, what you want to be able to do is look back and say, you know what, I enjoyed the game. I gave it everything I had, and it's been a blast, along that process.
Yeah, man, I think that's great advice. So I'll bring in Anthony Iapoce, a hitting coach. He's in his third season in that role. Previously spent time as a special assistant to the GM. So, we talked about the mental well-being of players and the ability to overcome failure. How do you prepare your players, hitters specifically, I guess, to retain that confidence over the course of 162?
It just comes through their preparation each day, showing up at the park. The game doesn't care if you're 0 for 4, 0 for 10. You got to perform the next day, and that's one of the great things about this sport. It's not football once a week or basketball, hockey, where you get a couple of days off to kind of sit back and work on some things. So it's important to guys to have not just a cage routine, but a daily routine from the time they get to the park that sets up their day, which gives them the preparations, which gives them the confidence, hopefully, to get in and have good at bats and help the team win. So definitely, for all the young guys out there, is prepare well. Obviously, everybody works hard, you know what I mean, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready for the game. So your preparation should breed confidence, whether it's your hitting or your ground ball work or your throwing. So stay prepared and work right to get you ready for the game, to maintain that confidence and that adversity that you're going to face. Because we always talk about, we don't judge a player when he's going good, because everything's good about him. We want to see when he faces adversity, he makes a ton of outs, what kind of teammate he is, so that we know we could trust him down the line when the big games matter at the end of the season.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And I feel like just in listening to you talk to me and us, the audience, about it, I think that definitely will bleed through, and you can kind of see why guys trust in their hitting coaches and you specifically. So, all right, I'm jumping to Chad Noble, bullpen catcher, entering his 7th season as a coach, drafted out of Northwestern, played in the Cubs minor league system. I know you wanted me to avoid you a little bit, but I'm coming with the heat. So, no, so this question will be more broad. How do you feel about the expanded postseason from last season, and moving forward, if they continue that? Do you think it has the risk of diluting kind of what it means to win the division and things like that? I know that was a pretty big discussion topic before last year.
Yeah, I don't think it really dilutes the division title. The division title is something that we go into every season trying to do, and every team feels the same way. I do feel like there shouldn't be as many teams, but I mean, this whole pandemic with the COVID, and just we had to change so many things day to day, week to week. It was so confusing and hard to navigate through. I think MLB did the right thing with adding more teams, making it more of like a kind of like a round robin playoff than it has been in the past. But if they do go back to less teams, I think it may be a little bit more important with the division winners.
Absolutely. I mean, as a fan and as a viewer, I think a lot of us were very excited to get some new teams in there and kind of expand it and let some other markets get a shot. And I didn't think that the baseball was any better or worse. I thought it was just overall great product. So I agree with you, though. I think the division obviously is always a goal and always what you're striving for, to make the postseason. All right, so I'll bump back up to Andy. What are some of the organizational steps that you guys took as a team to keep people safe throughout the pandemic? One of the things that I appreciated and loved the most about last season was we kind of went through the whole kind of grind of the season and had no COVID, flare-ups, I guess I'll call them. And I think that's a testament to you guys, but also the organization. So talk to me about some of those steps that you guys took to make sure everyone stayed safe.
Yeah, I think it started with Rossi, Theo, and Jed at the top. But Rossi in particular, like when you have a group of professional athletes that aren't typically used to having a whole bunch of rules in their lives, it takes somebody to sell the value of those rules to the group of guys in order to get them to like come on board with what you want to have done. And like from day one, like it felt like he was going to rip your head off if you violated the COVID protocol. Like you were a dead man walking. And like Rossi made it abundantly clear to everybody that the safety of everybody in that room was like his responsibility, and he was going to own that responsibility. And the rest of us, like, okay, we're just coming along for the ride. We just knew to obey what we were told to do. So it literally, from the first meeting we had at Wrigley as a group out in the stands, because we were never meeting inside with everybody, we're meeting outside. The way he spoke about it, the way Theo spoke about it, the seriousness that it was spoken about from the very top, like it just trickles down. That's what good leadership looks like. And, as coaches, we just carried out what Rossi wanted. It wasn't really very complicated. And, there still is with COVID, there's still being fortunate not seeing anyone get it. Like we can do
Hmm.
everything right and still someone can get COVID. Obviously, Tommy went through it very roughly, but like you don't, you're not immune to it just because you have great protocols. We were fortunate, we were blessed not to have any issues throughout the course of the season, and we're grateful for that. But I do think it starts with the leadership at the top and the job those guys did, and Rossi in particular. Like, I mean, I think he used Tommy's story and let Tommy speak to the group as well, and then talked about players that had children that might be immunocompromised a little bit.
Hmm.
Let people understand, like you're obeying protocols and make sure somebody else's kids are safe. And when it's spoken about in those types of terms, it becomes really easy to fall in line.
Absolutely. And I think the amount of national discussion and talk that the Cubs kind of made it through without any issues was, I think, very nicely highlighted. So good on you guys for kind of taking that serious, because this year obviously had so many ups and downs and unpredictable moments. So Tommy, I'll jump back your way. How do you use technology and analytics in your job with the Cubs? I know you have a background that is a little more analytics focused, and that's kind of all the rage these days. So what kind of things do you implement when you're trying to teach and get some points across to your guys?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot out there right now. Baseball is a sport where numbers and stats and analytics really have been around the game for a long, long time. We're just getting more and more tools and resources to figure out ways to break that all down. So,
Mm,
you know, I think the way we try to use it is be as progressive as we can in terms of how we can calculate data, how we bring data in, but be pointed in how we direct that information to the players, because in the end, like we've been there, you're dealing with human beings. You're not dealing with numbers. You're not dealing with robots. So it's one thing to understand analytics and understand where data comes from and what it's telling you. It's a complete other thing to translate that to the players and get them to buy in on what you want to do and sell them. We're fortunate now, guys are coming up through the minor leagues and through Major League Baseball now, and they're more accustomed to seeing this type of stuff and understanding it. But as coaches, I think that's one challenge that we deal with is the balance between analytics and what information is telling us, and then what the player needs. And that falls back on those relationships you create. It falls back on timing of when guys are ready to hear something, depending on what's been going on in the season in their lives, and just being that, keeping that human element to it. So like I said, just for me, it's as an organization, we strive to be the best and strive to be on top of all those things. But also, like we said, like just having that human element and being able to connect with the players and get them the information they need to be successful is the most important thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really do believe that the human element is super important. I know these numbers are out there and a lot more accessible than I guess they were even just 5 years ago. And you would hate to have guys, especially young guys, coming up just looking at the data and trying to figure it out that way versus listening to guys like you and their coaches. But I'll throw in one quick follow up for you, Tommy. This is from Sean in the chat. He wants to know how excited you are for Adbert Alzolay. He said his slider at the end of the year was filthy, and I think everybody saw that. So just give us a little bit about what your level of excitement for him is coming into the season.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with Adbert, the excitement is not just in what you see him continuing to develop, but just the fact that he's at a point now where he feels healthy. Mechanically, he's in a good spot, so he's like starting to hit his stride with a lot of different things, and physically kind of coming into his own. And he's as good as an example of anyone, of a guy who could take some of the analytics and information that was presented to him, make it usable. It's one thing to like understand it. It's a whole other thing to go out there and create it and be able to take it to the field and execute what we're trying to do. And testament to his work ethic and the time that he put in, especially in South Bend with that staff down there. So absolutely excited, one, that he's healthy and feeling good and really, finished the year strong last year, but two, that he can carry over the successes and the gains that he made last year, and really be an impactful pitcher for us, moving forward.
Yeah, man, I'm super pumped to see what he's able to do this season. You know, we've kind of been waiting and waiting for him to kind of get his shot, and hopefully he does it and runs with it this year. All right, I'll jump back to posts here. So in a recent conversation with Gallagher had with Lee Smith, he kind of talked about how he enjoyed coaching single A guys versus more of the vets and the big leaguers, and that was his personal preference. How do you specifically balance your coaching style with rookies versus veterans?
Sure. I always get asked that question a lot, and the question is usually to that similar as, you know, how do the veteran players listen to you?
Mm.
And my reply is the veteran players ask the most questions to me than a young guy coming up. A young guy's a little bit, he may be too impressionable. You know what I mean? He may be yesing everything you say, so you have to be really careful of the information you give him. He may be too coachable. You know, sometimes I'll test the kid and I'll make things up, which is absolutely wrong and off base to see head going yes, and then we're like, no, you know, you're the one getting in the box. You have to figure this out on your own. We're just kind of helping you guide and navigate you through the way. So the things that I've learned, being with the Rangers in the big leagues and being with the Cubs in the big leagues, that the veteran guys ask the most questions, which tells you that's the reason why they're in the big leagues. They're constant learners. So you're trying to pass that information to the young guys is to just be constant learners. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to be yourself. Dealing with guys like Nico Horner, you know, straight off the couch into the big leagues, sitting home, and all we try to do is just make him comfortable so that he could be himself, so he go out, perform, and help the team win. So there's definitely a balance. It's still getting to know the guy and where they're from, and finding out how each guy wants to be coached, whether he's a veteran, whether he's 15 years, whether he's 6 years, or he's got a couple of months, or whether he's an up and down guy. You take each angle differently. Kind of categorize guys how you've been in their career, and I think being a coordinator in the minor leagues for a little bit helped me with that, helped me navigate through those players. But every player is a little bit of a challenge, but that's the good part about coaching. I think everybody here would say that it's not about the pitching or the hitting or the catching or the you know, the game preparation. It's more about just coaching individuals, no matter where they come from or what their age is.
Awesome. Yeah. I can't imagine how many opinions and things that these guys have heard all the way up to the top. And, you know, you really are trying to just find what works for you and then make small adjustments, I would assume, for the guys that have the most staying power. But it is kind of surprising for me to hear you say that the vets are the ones that are asking the most questions. And that
Sure.
obviously does, you know, show the amount of learning and absorption that they want to take and just to stay as good as they are and continue to ascend in their careers. All right, so this question will be for everyone. We'll start with Andy. Uh, what's your favorite song to get motivated? This question was asked by Katie in the chat, and I think everyone should have to answer that one. I don't want to have anyone off the hook on that one.
I really think Chad Noble needs to start this one off. Like, he's ready for this. He's motivated easily. So Noble's like, let's go.
Motivated
Let's go.
easily. Yeah, just anything by Eminem. Let's
Oh, I
go.
love that. I
Pump
love
it up,
that.
get everyone going. It works, especially in the bullpen. Takes a lot of energy to get these guys up and ready to go. So we'll crank some Eminem, get everyone going. Hopefully they're throwing 100 that day.
Man, I love that. That's in my the Eminem is definitely in a big rotation for me, so love to hear it. All right, Andy, how about you?
Yeah, so yesterday I was working out with Mama and we were listening to some 80s big hair bands, some Bon Jovi at that time. And I had to show my kids what Bon Jovi's hair actually used to look like because they saw him on TV the other day. I was like, no, the hair was like this. So we were rocking out to Living on a Prayer working out. So, I mean, I really can't get past the 80s, so I'm still there.
That's awesome. Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of follow along that.
All
I
right.
thought you were going to say Private Eyes.
Well, that too. That's good.
Post, what about you?
I would say not motivated, but getting me to go somewhere is definitely Rizzo's walkout song, especially with the kids. They could just be running around the backyard, and I'll put on the speaker and put on Rizzo, and they bam, and they just stop and they start doing robot moves, and
Yeah.
very
That-
impactful. But like
that-
motivate probably anything Balboa, pound for pound, the best heavyweight in the world. He's in the Boxing Hall of Fame. Even though character, real and inspirations. I like the symphony stuff. I love the Eye of the Tiger, but dun, 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 that'll get when I'm feeling
Keep
down.
going.
Yeah. So anything about
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that Rizzo's walk-up song has become just like a phenomenon, and I love it. It's just like anytime you hear it, if you're at a bar, you're at a party, or wherever you are, you're always thinking about Riz with that. So, all right, we'll jump back. Let's do this one for Chad Noble. So we had Joe Torre, Mike Scioscia, Joe Girardi, Bruce Bochy, David Ross. What is it about catchers that makes them good big league managers, in your opinion?
I mean, it's the ever since you start catching, you have to like work through game planning. Like it's just in your brain game planning, pitch to pitch, player to player. You're just always working through how it's like a chess game, how you're going to get him out, but how is it going to play to the next guy in the next inning, and it's just all about game planning. So I think it's just kind of a natural progression. Like when you're done playing, your brain's always going to work that way, and I mean you're the captain of the team, like whether it's official or unofficial, like everyone listens to you because they know that you're prepped, you know what you're talking about, you understand how to get through the game. It's just one of those things where you're hardwired that way, and it just kind of naturally progresses into that role.
Yeah, man, I was not surprised to hear that David Ross was gonna throw his name in the ring to become a manager. And I kind of would push back with some of my buddies and say like the Grandpa Rossi thing was, I think, for show and for TV, but we know how intense he was as a player, and I think that he's a perfect guy, especially with this group. It's so tight knit. They've been together through ups and downs, and I think he's done a great job. And I think you put that perfectly. They're kind of just playing the chess back there. They're like the CEO on the field and kind of making sure everything is running smoothly.
Yeah, and he keeps people accountable, but he also lets them be who they are. Like there's no cookie cutter player with us.
Yeah, that's super important. I love to hear that. It's definitely a good decision in it, and we saw that on the field as early as last year. All right, so let's see. We can do this question from Ryan. He asks, what have you and other coaches talked about getting better with the on-base percentage from an offense perspective? So I guess I'll toss that to Coach Green.
Ooh, I thought that was clearly a pose question.
Well, you're the
offense. On-base. That's
We can-
100% a pose question.
we can double down. I want to hear from the bench coach perspective first, and then the hitting coach.
I mean, everything with baseball, like if you want to win, you got to get on base. And there's relentless effort every single season to get guys on base at a high clip. And I think what Pose does in the cage with guys before a game, getting them mentally prepared, what he does drill wise to get them in a position body wise to be ready to compete. Like those are things where it's at. Rossi really makes it abundantly clear that if we're going to be a great offensive club, like we have to be a club that gets on base consistently. So he pushes that from the top, and then Pose is working hard on that every single day. Now Val, along with Pose, is part of that process of getting those guys on base consistently. So let Pose jump into the nuts and bolts of it.
that was good.
Well, yeah. I mean, what are some of those things that you kind of work with them, prior to the game, kind of just getting their mindset ready to, do their best out there and make sure they're getting on base to lead to victory?
Well, with the group we have and some guys that could drive in runners, like Javi and Chris, and obviously Riz, and very good with runners on base. It's just trying to constantly convince them, like, guys on base create holes, guys on create situations, that the pitcher doesn't want to be in for certain types of hitters that we do have. I think the most challenging thing in baseball today is actually getting on base, because it's such a crave for power. So swing and miss has gone up, and not just say Cubs style, but MLB style. That on base percentage has go, and batting averages have gone down because of the types of velocity and the pitching that we are seeing just in the last 3 years has changed dramatically. When Tommy was talking about the data in the last 3 years, so I think at times too you're making it about the team, and I think hitting is a selfish thing. It's the most selfish thing in team sports. So it's constantly trying to convince guys that getting on base, whether it's a walk, whether it's an off-ball bunt, shift beater to get on base to get the inning going. And I don't think it's just a message from me. I think it's a message from our whole staff constantly, because you just can't have it from one or two guys. It has to be, like Rossi does a tremendous job, then Andy does, and then everybody else just kind of just keeps whispering in guys' ears, "Hey man, just get on base. Good things are going to happen." So you just keep talking about things, and then hopefully they follow suit.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm going to throw you this follow-up post. John asks, what prospects or young talent in the organization excite you the most? So I guess I'll toss that to you from a hitting perspective, since we talked about pitchers a little bit earlier.
Brent, obviously, we haven't seen a whole lot come through. Last year we saw some guys like Amaya. I've known Amaya since he was 16. Since we signed him coordinating, you could always see he had a pretty good efficient swing with low movement, and you can see him getting bigger and stronger now on the ball. Carrying, obviously, he's a catcher, so that's pretty excitable stuff when you got a catcher who can put the bat on the ball and can stay in the zone, and you're obviously excited about Brendan Davis's athleticism, the way he moves around the field. But you're still curious to see, because we lost a year, we lost a year, and guys are trying to stay in shape. They lose that year of competing, which they were in shape. So I'm just excited, hopefully, to see everybody get on, because you're not really following. You're following a couple guys in minor leagues, but when you have a minor league season, you're in the big leagues, you're following everybody. Just seeing the guys who are doing good, and you're calling those coaches in minor leagues, and just to get excited about the young players that we do have.
Absolutely. I got to meet Miguel Amaya at Cubs convention last year during a digital panel, and I was just like blown away by how just like big and fit that guy is for his age. And
Sure.
he seems to have like a pro ready body, and it's wild to see how much work he's put in as a youngster. And hopefully when he gets his shot, we can see kind of the fruits of all the work that he's put in, like you said. I'll go to Tommy with this one. What particular knowledge or advice has shown tangible success, either on the field or off, with some of the players that you've worked with?
I mean, we're pretty proud of the way we game plan at the major league level, and I think as guys come up in our system, and as guys we acquire, come into organization, kind of see the level of detail that we put into breaking down hitters and how we put that all together. And like Post said, like, we're getting so much information, and hitting is just becoming that much harder because of what we have at our fingertips on the pitching side. And ultimately, we're always going to be the one that's going to control the pace, because we have the ball in our hands, and we have the information, and we have the game plan and all that stuff. So, I think the one thing I think we're real proud of with the work that, that Mike Borzello does, and Brad Mills and Chris Young, and obviously, having Noble there to continue to provide support for these guys. And what we try to do is just give them the best information possible to get them armed and ready to come in the game. So when they come in, they're ready to dominate. And that's the thing I think we're probably most proud of, how our infrastructure works to kind of create that environment of learning, but also giving them the right tools to be successful.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously very important. And I kind of see it when I look at other organizations, and none that I can name offhand, but you can tell that there's differences everywhere. And I think that that kind of relationship that you have with your players, and how you're able to kind of communicate, and it's not like I'm better than you, I want to do better than you, I want to show you what I can do. It's more of just like collective, and everyone is moving toward that goal of winning the division, winning a World Series. So that's awesome to hear. All right, I have an awesome question from Mike. He asked Chad Noble, what does he miss having his name yelled from the bleachers?
I hear it outside. Even with the COVID, I could hear it coming over. I mean, it's loud.
No shortage of Noble fans for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, we probably have the most fan favorite bullpen catcher in the league, so that's definitely you. I wanted to throw a follow up on this one. You know, we had the season now with no fans in the stadium, but we have the luxury of these rooftops and the bleachers out here. Did you hear a ton of fans when the season was going on, when it got warm? Could you like really feel it and hear it from across the street?
Yeah, it was weird though, because you could hear them like they were standing right next to you. So like Javi could be on second base and someone on a bleacher out in right field is like, "Hey Javi, take one more step," and he's like, "All right," and like he'll take one more step. So it was weird. It wasn't all just drowned out noise. It was like very specific things that you could hear, which has never happened.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty funny, man. I mean, I spent one game up there, and it was very strange because I felt like when I was yelling, I would get like see head movements, and I'm like, man, they really might be able to hear me. So that's really cool. So this one's for Coach Green. What kind of focus and like what kind of direction do you feel like you have to have heading into spring training? And this is going to be an interesting spring training. So how do you feel like this will be different than years past when you kind of get down there to Arizona?
Yeah, for starters, we're still waiting for the rules.
Hmm.
Still waiting to know how many guys we can have in camp, how much staff we can have in camp. From like a planning and logistics perspective, like getting Rossi's vision onto the field every day, like kind of need to know your rules. Kind of need to know if you have to work in group of five or if you can have the whole team together.
Hmm.
So still kind of sitting tight, waiting on Major League Baseball. But the biggest difference is like if they keep fans away, because spring training, like one of the greatest parts about spring training is the close proximity fans get to us, particularly the players, and they're just right up on you, and you have real fan interactions because you're not rushed. You don't have a ton of stuff going on other than getting ready for the season. So if we miss some of that fan interaction, that's kind of what the game's getting robbed of right now, and that's really
Hmm.
tough. And who knows what's going to happen with the Cactus League, if fans are going to be in the stands for us or not. But the game is still incredibly special, but it just doesn't feel quite the same without fans in the stands. So I think that has a chance of being kind of the biggest difference this year. But I'm the guy that gets to put pen to the paper and kind of coordinate spring training and make sure it functions properly. So I'm probably the most anxious about getting rules that we have to play by. So yeah, at some point in time, we'll plan it out, but we'll be ready to go. And Ross has already kind of laid out what his vision is for spring, and yeah, Tommy knows on the pitching side and Poe's on the hitting side, and then we'll get the schedule sorted out here soon enough. And if we don't, then everybody knows who to blame.
That's awesome. All right, this one will be for Post. What's your main message for the hitters going into this year, specifically when you talk about like approach and mindset of the club, going forward into the season?
I think the message will be a little bit clearer where guys feel like it's a regular season, even though they won't be fans, but the amount of games and the amount of at bats where they could relax a little bit more, to where if you didn't get off to a good start in 20 in major leagues and you put pressure on yourself to try and chase the numbers, and it usually ends up backfiring on you. So I think just letting them know that they could play through the season, relax, to go out and compete, and not to worry if you don't get off to that good start, because there's going to be plenty of bats on the back end where you could iron out your season. And then just to continue to be there for each other, and get through the season as far as whatever rules we have, and was really proud of the guys last year on how they just were able to adjust on the fly. It was like summer ball, to where it changes at times and things like that. So I think our message, or at least for me, will be coming from, look, you handled all these protocols last year on the fly, game times getting changed, and you were able to do it, and we were successful as a team that got to the playoffs. So let's carry that mindset in going into this year, that we're going to be able to do it over a full season again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely it's going to feel different for the guys, I'm sure. And, just getting back to that kind of normal grind of 162, if that's, the format that we're, lucky enough to have this year. Um, I'll throw this follow up in here for posts. Michael, oh, thank you, Philip, for that question, by the way. And Michael wants to know, who do you see as kind of the leadoff hitter this year? You don't have to give us a specific name, but maybe some guys that might fit that mold up at the top.
Sure, I think Ian Happ did a tremendous job for us last year. When some guys were were not where they wanted to be, and Happer was at the bottom of the lineup and getting things going for the guys. And then, when Rossi moved them up there, he didn't, miss a beat or try to change who he was. It was nice to maybe lead off the game with a 1-0 homer or a double in the gap, and he's already in scoring position. He's a really good base runner. He can eke out a walk if he needs to. He understands the game within the game, knowing when to take pitches, who's hitting behind him, quick outs in front of him. Tremendous feel for the game. So, I would think probably Ian would probably be the first one. And then, as we get through spring training, we iron things out. You never know through injuries, but I thought Happer did a tremendous job being a catalyst at the top of the lineup, but also understanding, what he needs to do for the other guys. Maybe he needs to see more pitches for KB or Javi behind him, and he did that tremendously. And still have that power speed combination with a pretty good approach at the plate from both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ian Happ's arrival has just been something super special. I feel like over the last off season, he kind of came into his own. He's a podcast host now. He's doing so many charitable things, and he's got his own coffee. The guy's just like on top of the world at this point. So, it's really cool to see how, with all of that being kind of put in that position at the top of the lineup, him to just embrace it and really just take it and run. I felt like for last year when there was questions, he kind of silenced all of them and said, hey, like, this is going to be my spot and I'm going to do what I can to get the most out of that leadoff spot at the top. Shai has a question, and I'll throw this one to Tommy. How do you become a coach? I think that's pretty broad, but I think it's an interesting one because everyone's kind of journey is a little different. So maybe I'll have each of you kind of just like give us a couple words on it, but I'll start with you, Tommy.
You have to be not very good as a player, number one. You have to be good enough to where you have a chance, but not good enough to where you have a long enough career and you make enough money. That's number one. I think the biggest thing, for us is, and at least on my end, is I really enjoyed, seeing the game outside of just my own perspective, in terms of as a player, whether I was in the bullpen or I was starting coming up. But I just tried to learn as much as I could because I love the game. And I think what all of us, I think to a man, love about what we get to do as coaches is that interaction with the player, bringing it every day to where we can get them to be the best version of themselves. And yes, we want to win. We want to win divisions. We want to win the World Series. But we understand that, like, getting the best version of, Kyle Hendricks and getting the best version of Craig Kimbrell and helping them accomplish their own goals are going to help us be better as a team. And I think, we focus on that. What can we do to bring it every day for those guys for what they need? And in terms of like getting into coaching, that's what really drove me, is just wanting to be there and be able to help guys understand where the game was going, how technology was evolving in this game, and just kind of help bridge that gap a little bit.
Chad, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. It's just like for me, every day I go in there, and obviously I wasn't a very good player. But like Tommy said, you're good enough to get to a certain point, but then at some point you're done and you have to do something else. But like he started talking about like the Kyle Hendrickses and like the Kimbrells, and you see them struggle. I mean, obviously they're on a different echelon, like they're very good players, but you see them struggle day to day with just minor tweaks and things, and you bring what you see from the outside, what you couldn't do, and you just try to get them to understand, like, hey, I'm not telling you what to do, but this could really help you. And it just like small things like that, when you see it actually work out, it's really gratifying.
Coach Green?
Yeah, all their stuff's real. I mean, the empathy you develop by struggling as a player in the game translates immensely the way you can create personal connections with players once you're a coach in the game. And that empathy and personal connection is what opens the door up to give what you should have, which is knowledge and some competitive advantage that you can translate to the player, be it on the pitching side, the hitting side, emotionally in the bullpen, or how you game plan in the bullpen, or for me on the defensive side, catching ground balls and having a mentality there. Like all that stuff, like all those things open up the door to what a coach should ultimately have, which is the ability to deliver a competitive advantage to the team that helps the team win a little bit more. But I echo what Tommy said. Like the failure I experienced in this game, let me understand how hard this game is. And those traits, if you don't have those traits and don't have that understanding, you seldom get in the door to deliver the message that ultimately translates into helping a player be a better version of themselves. So all of it kind of comes together. But man, without the failure and struggle of being a career 200 hitter in the big leagues and knowing how hard it was to like actually get to the Mendoza line, gives you a lot of empathy and understanding of what these guys go through on a daily basis.
And then, yeah, finally, Post, if you want to just.
Yeah, agreeing with all of that. I think I got into coaching not necessarily for the hitting. As a matter of fact, it wasn't for the hitting. It was just to start coaching, helping guys like Andy said, just helping guys navigate through a minor league season, helping them avoid the pitfalls that maybe I went through or I saw tons of players go through in the minor leagues, because there's a lot of minor leaguers that were super good as competitive as anybody else, but just kind of fell through the pitfalls of being away from home, not understanding that, not making a lot of money, always worrying about getting released, and all these things affected the way they stepped in the box, or the way they threw pitches, or the way they feel the ground ball. So I didn't always see myself as a hitting coach or even as a major league coach, but I always had that knack for wanting to lead guys, I guess. And, even coaching like fall travel teams in the winter when we weren't playing, I enjoyed that. Or coaching basketball and just trying to help guys pull together as a team, which really entices me. I love that. I love when dog piles are on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Inley is helping. It was the start of minor leagues. Was just helping guys navigate and get through. Especially at that. I love the level of their first long season where they have no idea what's going to happen to them. Like they have no idea about the bus, the travel, the everyday. Moving up and down, possibly getting released. That one being in small towns. Helping them get through that one. That one I really love, holding guys accountable at their first full season. Is probably my funnest season of coaching.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. To me, it really, as I got, I played baseball in college, and as I got through it more coaching felt more like a people business than just like I can tell you what to do, because, some guys listen better than others, but, if you got a coach that has your best interest in mind and you can feel that on a personal level, those are the kind of connections that I felt, were the strongest when you talk about player to coach. I'm going to jump back to Coach Green here. This question's from John. This one's from Brandon. Sorry. He asks, who do you think the most improved player last year was on the Cubs?
I thought we had a lot of like really impressive pitching performances, but immediately, because I'm a position player coach, my mind strays away from the pitchers. So that's all I want to talk about, pitchers right now. I think there's a bunch of different facets of the game. I think what Ian Happ did last year at the top of the order that Poe's brought up was probably the most impactful of all the guys. He went out there and manned center field for us, which was a position of weakness probably for us going into spring training, and he handled that spot really well. And he became what we needed him to be for us to go out and win a division, which is really, really impressive. What Anthony Rizzo and Javi Baez do with a glove on their hands day in and day out, and Jason Hayward is second to none in Major League Baseball. I thought Wilson Contreras behind the plate took a ton of strides receiving the ball last year. Did a great job back there. So there's a lot of really good stuff on the position player front, and we'll just completely ignore the pitchers other than that.
Well, I can't necessarily ignore the pitcher, so I'll kick that to I'll kick this to Tommy.
Trust
as
me,
well.
Tommy's gonna get his words in. I'm confident of that. He's gonna get his words in.
I think Greeny was right on. I mean, I love the way Wilson worked last year too. I mean, we talk about the pitchers, but the catching side of it is so integral in what we do as a group, and Wilson continues to get better in every aspect, and he is just not satisfied. He's never satisfied. He just constantly is pushing, constantly trying to get the best out of our guys, out of himself, and whether that's receiving, whether that's game calling, whether it's the throwing side, offensively. That's the thing I think we noticed the most just on the pitching side, and just the work he puts in. I can't answer that any better than what Greeny said.
Yeah, man, I agree. And having a guy like Wilson that can hit you 30 home runs, and you've seen the progression he's had from receiving, like you guys have all mentioned. He really feels like Chicago's catcher. That's what I think. He's just like plays with his hair on fire, lots of emotion, and you kind of want that from a guy that's really managing the game, like we talked about with Rossi, and what makes catchers, good managers. That kind of player who's willing to kind of just lay it all on the line for the team in that position, I think, is just incredibly crucial. I think we'll have time for just a couple more. This I want to ask to everyone from Steve-O. Would you share the details of a funny or favorite story where you worked with a player and then immediately saw an impact, and describe how that made the player feel? And we can start with Chad.
A funny story about when
Or your
sometime-
favorite, if like you were trying to tell someone, this might work, and then it worked, that kind of.
I think one of the funniest ones was with you, Darvish. Tell me, was it last year or it might have been a couple of years ago when he was talking to Borzy about it was like a left-handed curveball throwing it righty, and he went out there with me. 5 minutes later, he's like, I want to try something. And literally within the first 3 throws, he was throwing me left-handed curveballs with his right hand. It was just incredible. Like, that guy could do anything he wants with a baseball.
So now he has 15 pitches. Okay, noted.
It's in the 30s for me.
There's a lot of funny Darvish stories. One for me with him was there was a day he was throwing a bullpen, and I went to talk to him about something that we were going to work on, and he looked right at me and goes, hey, I got my camera. He was YouTubing his bullpen, and I was going to talk to him about something, and he's like, hey, don't say it because everybody can see it, it's just funny. Like, Darvish, there's always so many like unique quirks, of working with him.
Well, then the next bullpen, we didn't say a word to him just out of spite.
Yeah, just because he told us not to say anything.
So Coach Post, how about you? How about something for hitters?
Every day with those guys, man. I mean, you guys have seen that group over the years and the stuff that they do in the dugout, and you talk to them about. I mean, there's a couple offhand. It wasn't last year, the year before. Riz was going through his April worries, and but he's competing at the plate, and it was like at the end of April, and he's like, give me something. I'm going up to the plate. I'm like, all right, just try to be loose and relax your upper body. We've told him that a million times. He gets up there and he hits a homer on that pitch, and he comes back, and I'm like, man, you really looked loose. He's like, no, I wasn't thinking about that at all. I was really thinking about
That's amazing.
Yeah, and there's so many other ones, like when Schwarb would be the best because he would out-talk himself out of anything sometimes. He's like, you know what should I do? And we'll talk about it. He's like, all right, I'll do that. And then he'll pop out or strike out and come back to the dugout and just be like, I'm like, what happened? You said you were going to, jump on his fastball or sit breaking ball. And he's like, I changed it at the last second. It didn't work. You got to get something. Every day it's something with those guys. They're great. I mean, they're able to be loose for the most part during the game when they're not successful. So it makes you feel a little bit better going through it with them.
And then I guess I'll wrap with this one for Coach Green. Last year was obviously no fans and very different, but I think a lot was made about how the Cubs and, in the dugout, we kind of brought our own energy and whether it be cheering guys on or, doing clapping when Riz is going to bat, what kind of challenges were that, not playing in front of fans specifically here, but also, going on the road and being in enemy territory with, I think Cubs fans travel as good as anyone in the league. So you would normally have representation everywhere, but that year where it's just no fans anywhere, what was that really like?
Well, speaking of like Cubs fans traveling unbelievable anywhere, like I still remember my last year managing in San Diego, and Nico Horner like makes his debut there, and the stands we're in San Diego and they're chanting Nico. Like, this isn't right. This is broken. I was angry. Like, there's supposed to be our fans here, and they're chanting for Nico Horner, getting a full, like, I mean, the kid's been in the big leagues for 6 minutes, and he's got 3 hits already against us. I think one he hit off the ground, and then one he hit over his head, and like he's getting his name chanted. So being in the other dugout, like, I was so looking forward to being in front of Cubs fans as a Chicago Cub, and that was honestly one of the big reasons I chose to be here. I had some other opportunities, and I wanted to be at Wrigley Field with the fans, with those players that like so talented in the coaching staff. Like, I was fired up about that aspect about anything else, and felt somewhat robbed, for lack of a better word, of not getting to experience that last year and not knowing how we're going to experience that this year. Like, it's such a great group of players that, from a tribal player mentality perspective, like, I had more fun than I've had in years in baseball, because that group of guys is so much fun, and we did create our own energy, and we did bring it to the ballpark, and just being in there and in that environment under Rossi, like, that was a blast. But it was only a fraction of the blast that I was expecting, because the fans weren't there. So we're hopeful, man. We're incredibly hopeful that Wrigley will be rocking again here really soon. And it really is the fans that separate Cubs from anybody else in baseball. And I remember coming in maybe my first or second year managing, and we were beating the Cubs. I think we had like a $28 million payroll that year, and we're like beating the Cubs. And it might have been like the year after you guys won the World Series. And there was an eighth inning pop up that Alexei Ramirez dropped, and the decibel level shot through the roof as we managed to find a way to lose a baseball game, probably from great coaching. But man, it was like, there aren't places in baseball that resonate with you as a player and a coach the way Wrigley does and the way Cubs fans do. And so, like, not experiencing that last year stunk, but man, that group of guys in that dugout, they love representing that city, and being a part of that on the side and helping out any way you can is a really special opportunity.
Man, I'm fired up. I wish the season was starting tomorrow, man. I think we're adequately, pumped up, and hopefully we can all get back into Wrigley safely and enjoy the team. I know that was hard for me. I definitely try and go to as many games as I can, and that last year was just so tough. And I know that was tough for you guys and the players as well. So I definitely want to say thank you guys for your time. I know you guys could be doing anything else, and we really appreciate you kind of opening up for this event. So that's kind of all we got. This was our live Q&A with the Cubs coaches. Thank you to Andy Green, Tommy Hotovy, Anthony Iaposi, and Chad Noble for dropping by. And a special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Gallagher, the official insurance broker, benefits, and risk management services partner of the Chicago Cubs. Hopefully we'll get to do this again. And if not, good luck, good health, and we'll see you guys in spring training.
Thanks.
All right.
Nice job,
Thanks,
Michael.
Michael.